hello there. It's another day. I'm Jim Harrington.
And I am Bill Knight. Good to see you here, sir.
Good to see you too, my friend. A lot of stuff going on. Still a lot of the same news that we've been talking about the last couple of days. The indictment of President Trump for those bogus charges, and the hiding of the information about President Biden and his son. And the corruption,
yes. Yeah, everything is a fluff piece on Biden and Jill out on a date night the other day. And, I'm sitting here going, but, I got to wonder, I have the notes from the other day when we did the show. Mm-hmm. And I was going to say, well, McCarthy didn't pull the trigger yet, and that was the thing. And I started thinking about this. Now, there's a thing called timing, and it was a race of time because it was it's eminent that an impeachment is coming. All right.
Yeah.
Now, Congress is now on recess, the August recess, so nothing's going to happen during this month. If it does, I'd really be surprised. But you never know. Stranger things. But the simple fact they didn't do it, so. And both sides were threatening, impeachment, indictment. The ayes were out there battling one another. And the Democratic ayes won with, another indictment. Number 3, none of which hold any merit or water. And they're bringing in all of Trump's, associates. We're gonna bring the whole crew down. Is it too late now to impeach Biden? Are the Democrats going to go, we were first? This is a tit for tat.
No. I think that's coming, but I'll tell you what I think they should do based upon what they did this week is I think the Republicans who have the power, they should shut government down. They should go in there. They should have a special session. They should shut government down. If you're going to play fast and loose with the law and use it as a weapon against our party and our side and our candidate, then we have a right to shut it down until we get some answers as to why you think you're able to do this. We want to see it, not in court, mind you, beforehand. Vivek Ramaswamy, he's a young guy. He's running for the presidency, but the thing that separates him from the rest of the other candidates, from the rest of the pack, is that he's always run on his strengths, his positiveness. He doesn't attack President Trump. He seems to have a respect for President Trump. This week, after the indictment came down, Ramaswamy announced he had filed a lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Justice following its failure to respond to a Freedom of Information request. These requests seek to uncover what White House officials, including Joe Biden, communicated to Attorney General Merrick Garland and Department of Justice official Jack Smith regarding the indictments in the high-profile cases of former U.S. President and one of Biden's 2024 presidential election rivals, Donald J. Trump. Essentially, Vivek Ramaswamy, who some would say would benefit if Trump would fall out of the race, is stepping up to his defense, to Trump's defense. He's doing something which the other candidates, like Mike Pence, are not doing. Mike Pence, we talked about that.
Pence needs to go to hell where he came from because you know what? Look, I don't like to sit there and challenge a person's faith, but I will challenge his patriotism. I will challenge that. I say he is a scumbag. And I can say that confidently because he's got a media background, and a lot of people in the media are scumbags. You can call me one if you want to. I don't care.
Well, you're not running for president, but I'm not. He has a way, an affected tone in his voice where he has this pompous, I don't know, kind of an arrogant way of delivering, a know-it-all kind of approach. And if you don't agree with him, well, maybe you're just a little slow. I mean, Pence is not the guy that I think he tries to present himself as. I mean, he really became vice president because when Trump went down there, he didn't know anybody in D.C. He didn't know any of the players. And somebody,
here comes Pence.
And somebody recommended, they said, here's a guy, this guy Mike Pence, he's a mild, mellow, experienced representative from Indiana, has a background in broadcasting. I think you'll like him. He's born-again Christian. He is just a real solid, salt-of-the-earth kind of guy. And Trump took the advice of somebody, and it was terrible advice. What he needed was somebody like a Kerry Lake or even a Vivek Ramaswamy who would stand up and take some shots for the president. That's the problem. He surrounded himself with some people who didn't take the shots. They stepped out of the line of fire. They weren't on his side. I was going to play for you, Bill. This is from CNN. This is, they had a list of unnamed co-conspirators. They called them lawyers. I think one wasn't a lawyer. And they were unnamed for a reason. That means they were not supposed to be made public. Unnamed co-conspirators.
Yeah, but CNN got the list.
But someone at the Department of Justice figured, well, it's unnamed except for CNN. So all the high school reporters over at CNN, and believe me, if you look at CNN, it doesn't look like the CNN of 20 years ago, where they had some
it's a joke.
These people are like, it's like they got out of grade school, high school, and somebody handed them a legal pad, and all of a sudden, there they are in front of the camera. If you're blonde, you're on camera. But anyway, and they don't look happy at CNN. If you look at people over at some of the conservative networks, they seem happier. The people at CNN it's like everything tastes bad. That's the look on their face. Anyway, here's the report from CNN about those unnamed co-conspirators.
That's right, Wolf. As you noted, there are 6 co-conspirators who are unnamed in this indictment. We are prepared to identify 5 of them at this point based on reporting from our CNN team. I think most notably the first unindicted co-conspirator, who again is unnamed in this indictment, we have identified as Rudy Giuliani. The indictment notes that this is someone who called the Arizona Speaker of the House. That was Rusty Bowers, somebody who made a presentation before Georgia state lawmakers, and the person that Donald Trump tapped to lead his post-election legal efforts. That is all Rudy Giuliani. Number 2 in this indictment is former Trump attorney John Eastman. This is the person who wrote this 2-page memo. This was the plan for Mike Pence to be able to essentially overturn the 2020 presidential election while presiding over the Electoral College certification. Number 3 on this list, another former Trump attorney, Sidney Powell. They point out that she filed a lawsuit against the governor of Georgia, which we knew. They also point out in this indictment that Donald Trump was espousing the theories of this co-conspirator, even though he had privately admitted that they sounded crazy. We know all of that to be Sidney Powell. Co-conspirator number 4 on this list is someone we've talked about a lot, former Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark. The indictment identifies him as a Justice Department official. It also points to an email that a top DOJ person sent to Clark, rebutting his efforts to try to use the department to overturn the 2020 election. And again, number 5, we have another pro-Trump lawyer. This is Kenneth Chesbrough. He was someone who was very involved in this fake electors plot. The indictment points to an email memorandum that he sent to Giuliani in December of 2020 about the fake electors plot. So based on everything that we have previously reported, everything we know, what our sources are telling us, and of course the work of the House committee that investigated January 6th, those are the 5 co-conspirators that we are prepared to identify at this point, notably all attorneys who worked alongside Donald Trump in this effort to try to overturn the 2020 election, Wolf.
Okay, it goes on. It's a longer report, but you get the essence. The thing that gets me about that is she acts not like a reporter, but as a cheerleader for the co-conspirator indictments.
Number 1.
When she talks about Rudy Giuliani like he did something wrong, Sidney Powell, because she went out there and defended the president and thought it was stolen.
She filed a lawsuit. That's terrible. She filed a lawsuit.
Well, they're criminalizing that, Bill. They are criminalizing that. They are making that illegal.
But they're taking, again, we mentioned it in another show, they're taking the justice system and turning it on its head upside down. Everything that's right is wrong. Everything that's wrong is right. And so they're vilifying anybody that speaks out against them, going, we'd like to see those election results. Let's get in and do it. For instance, no, there's nothing wrong here. You're a denier.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? You're not only a denier, but you are a conspirator.
Of course.
And you are not a patriot. and you should be thrown
Well,
into jail.
Based upon what we've said in the past in this program, we'd be criminals for saying what we believe. That it
Well,
was
that's coming because Sanders is behind that.
Yeah.
With his move against the climate change thing. Well, you ought to prosecute these people. When are they going to start prosecuting people that voted Republican or independent? If you didn't vote Democrat, you're not part of our democracy.
If you had told me that we would be in this world right now 20 years ago, I would have laughed.
You would have said I was cracked in the head.
Yeah, that'll never happen. Not in this country. We're different. No, we're not. What is it? Was it Reagan who said we're one election away from losing it? The democracy, one election, and it's true. I mean, there are corrupt, evil people in D.C. What this guy in Washington is doing right now, Jack Smith, is that's the illegal action. He's using our government, our money, our resources to attack innocent citizens. I mean, every guy who lost an election has denied his losing the election. I mean, really. I mean, everybody who loses it, I didn't really lose that. I don't know. I felt it was a much stronger election. I mean, everybody who loses an election, usually, they have an excuse. But the way these guys are positioning that now, you cannot question your losing the election anymore. If you lose the election, you are expected to bow dutifully towards the government and say, I agree with you, I lost, and move on. And if you don't do that, they will indict you. It's as simple as that. And this is a dystopian world we're living in. We're living in a world with right is wrong, wrong is right, good is bad. The criminals are the guys who are getting rewarded, and the good guys are getting punished. And this has got to stop. I mean, we are headed towards a brick wall, Bill.
Everybody wants to be a good citizen, but they've taken it and turned it into a movie script, like the bugs when they fought against the bugs. You're a good citizen. Citizenship has its advantages and has its duties. I almost don't like the word citizen because anymore, a citizen should be doing the democratic thing and voting for Democrats and not supporting the thought that the election was stolen, because it was not stolen.
What you're saying essentially, Bill, is that the definition of citizen now is more like the Soviet definition of citizen back in the 60s than the American definition. The American definition, when you said I'm an American citizen when I was younger, you said it with pride. It meant something. There was value to it.
I'm telling you right now,
tarnished it.
We need to take citizen out of our vocabulary because it has been bastardized. And I hear the mention of citizen so much that in the term bastardized, I want to throw up every time I hear it. So you know what? I am a member of this country, and I don't even like membership because that implies a duty that somebody controls. Citizenship is controlled. Membership is controlled.
That's true. It doesn't have the same definition that it had when we were younger. They've turned it upside down, inside out.
So what are you fighting for? Do you really want to be a member of this? Do you want to be a citizen in part of something that is evil?
Because I want my country back.
Well, I want my country back too.
Yeah,
but you're not going to get it. I don't see it happening.
Well,
I mean,
I'm praying to God, and I do mean that sincerely. I'm not using that as just a term. I am praying to God that He is on our side and He's helping us fight the forces of evil. I know that may sound a little theological and spooky to some people, but it's what I believe, and I think our country needs all the prayers that it can get right now because the evil side, the side of darkness, is no strings attached. They've pulled out all of the stoppers. They're coming after us with everything, and we're seeing it. I mean, we're seeing it.
Does God pick sides, or does He just give us the knowledge for us to decide what is
Well,
right and what is wrong.
I think prayer works. And does God pick sides? I'd like to think that God stands with goodness, and I do.
Well, he does.
And
but
if that's
think
the
he
case,
gives us the tools to sit there and make the right choice. It's up to us ultimately.
I believe that if you are good, and you stand for goodness, He'll stand with you. I do believe that He takes sides. So, for example, I think in World War II He took sides. He saw the world struggling and fighting, and Hitler.
That's a good point.
Hitler could have won that thing. But he didn't.
By some counts, he should have won the thing.
That's right.
But he had the upper hand.
Well, I mean, was it a divine thing that he ran out of oil? I'm just saying. I mean, that's he ran out of oil. If he hadn't run out of oil, that war might still be going on.
Maybe he's already got control, because what are we running out of?
We're running out of oil. That's true. You're a bad boy. Hey, I want to play Rudy Giuliani again. We played him a couple of days ago, and I want to play it now because it's important. He spoke with Eric Bolling a couple of days ago, and he sounded surprised when Eric said that you were mentioned as a unnamed co-conspirator. He said, I haven't gotten any advance warning from the Justice Department or notification. Apparently, when they're going to indict you, they send you a letter that they're going to indict you before they indict you, and he hasn't gotten that. But CNN didn't waste any time making him one of the named people anyway.
And now the fact that CNN did it, is that not illegal? And does that not cause for pause and an investigation into the DOJ and anybody at CNN that's got this information, that's got this inside track?
As long as CNN is a mouthpiece for the left and working with the DOJ, they can do anything they want. And they know that they will.
Here right now to question what they do, and I question what the DOJ does.
Well, I agree with you.
The leak is illegal. I mean, that right there calls for.
Hey, tell me what about this whole case is legal?
But it should be thrown out. It's been tainted by the leak.
But what about this whole indictment process is legal? Nothing.
It's tainted.
The whole thing is a joke.
Out.
Anyway, here's Rudy Giuliani. Listen.
Now let's bring in former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. He's also the host of the hit new show, America's Mayor, which you can catch on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and Getter. Mr. Mayor, the reason why I listed the first two, I was watching some of the various networks prior to coming live here at 8 o'clock, and over on CNN, sir, they named you as one of the co-conspirators. MSNBC, Joy Reid, went further and said Rudy Giuliani is, or allegedly is, or somehow framed it where they were pointing the finger at you as being the number one, the first co-conspirator. How do you respond to those, not really accusations, those comments?
There's no way they have not sent me a target letter, a subject letter, and any kind of letter. Everything I know about this is exculpatory. What I mean by that is, to me, when I read this, it contains a tremendous amount of false statements, more false statements than true ones, actually. And it seems like it's not even an indictment. I'm not sure I know what the crime is. I mean, I know these crimes. These are very, very vague crimes. The Supreme Court has criticized most of them for being too vague. It charges, actually, Donald Trump with exercising his right of free speech. I mean, this is a historic and very, very sad indictment, because it's probably one of the biggest attacks the United States government has made on free speech in our very, very long and illustrious history. We not only have the most crooked president we've ever had in our history, we have the one who violates the Constitution the most. This indictment is an outrage. This is, whether you agree or disagree, whether this is true or false, every single thing here he had every right to say as an American citizen. When the hell does the government get to tell you you can't object to an election? I mean, Hillary Clinton said most of this stuff, but of course she never gets indicted. She even smashed up her hard drive and got rid of 300,000 emails and paid $1 million to develop a false story to frame Donald Trump. And she's walking around free as a bird. And Donald Trump is getting indicted for exercising his right of free speech. I think I have to remind these guys he's an American citizen.
You know, and Mr. Mayor, 4 of the 6 co-conspirators, they, again, didn't name, but they outlined 4, are attorneys. Now, all of a sudden, you can't talk to an attorney and without them feeling like they're going to be indicted for co-conspiracy charges. I mean,
yeah, right.
If that's not tampering, I don't know what is. Go ahead.
Well, if you don't agree with the regime, they try to disbar you and they try to imprison you. What does that sound like? Sounds like communist China to me, not the United States of America. Biden has ruined our country. It's a disgrace what he's done. And I don't care if you hate Donald Trump. This is a violation of his right of free speech. You even have a right to lie under the First Amendment. Now, he didn't. The strange thing here is the people lying are the people bringing this. And this count they have here, conspiracy against rights, they should be indicted for conspiracy against rights for bringing this indictment. It's a conspiracy against.
So Mr. Mayor, no one contacted you. You didn't have to testify in front of this grand jury.
I gave them. I voluntarily gave them all the information that I could that wasn't privileged, because all the information that I have is that just like he was innocent of the false charge of Russian collusion, he's completely innocent here. I don't possess any information that is inculpatory. I mean, I know they have written lies in the newspaper. I cooperated against him like hell I did. There's nothing to cooperate about. If I cooperated against him, you should put me in jail for perjury. I don't have any information that he violated any law. What I do have is I would seriously consider indicting them for 18 U.S.C. Section 241 for indicting a man for exercising his right of free speech. That's a conspiracy against rights. These people are dangerous. They don't seem to care,
Mr. Mayor. They don't seem to care, and they don't care that the timing of this just it stinks. It stinks like rotten fish. Take a listen to Jack Smith earlier today saying, after 2.5 years since the alleged crime that Donald Trump committed happened, now they need a speedy trial. Listen.
In this case, my office will seek a speedy trial so that our evidence can be tested in court and judged by a jury of citizens.
Go ahead, Mayor. What do you say to that?
What I say to that is there's no way this wasn't rushed, because it's also poorly written and has a lot of mistakes in it. This was rushed for 2 reasons. One, yesterday, Biden got his head kicked in completely. The false exculpatory statements that were revealed yesterday, 24 of which most lawyers wouldn't understand this, completely convict him. Under the law, a false exculpatory statement is as powerful as a confession. That comes right out of evidence textbooks. What Archer did is prove that for 10 years, Biden has been lying completely. All of that can be used against him as evidence of guilt. It's very, very powerful. It's much more damaging than I think even a lot of the congressmen realized. And it makes him like probably not only the biggest crook in American history, the biggest liar.
So what do you say to Jack Smith? I mean, and again, I guess you have to be careful what you say. He still is the special investigator, the special prosecutor.
I kind of
holds, yours and others' future. Go ahead.
Long ago, stopped being careful, and I don't worry about the Jack Smiths of this world. I have a chapter in my book called Stand Up to Bullies. So here's what I say to Jack Smith. After the Supreme Court threw out your case, which should have been a disgrace, and you should have gone and found another profession because you don't belong in this one. This one will be your legacy. Violating the right of free speech of an American citizen. Never mind whether he was president or not. It could be anybody. It could be a homeless person. You don't get to violate people's First Amendment rights, Smith, no matter who the hell you are or no matter how sick you are with Trump derangement syndrome. And this isn't the first time you've acted like an unethical lawyer. It should be the last.
That's Rudy Giuliani. He was on with Eric Bolling a couple of days ago, and boy, he pretty well lays it out. What's happening? What he thinks is happening.
Oh, I agree with him. I agree with him wholeheartedly. I was sitting there listening to that, and then I was sitting there reading about Kevin McCarthy and and everything and his thoughts and everything. But and what you said earlier that maybe the Republicans just ought to shut down the government. And
I agree.
They really should. In other words, we need to sit there and double down on them and give them a taste of their own medicine. Now, my question is, McCarthy's talking today, but I thought the House is on recess, but he's speaking during recess.
Mm-hmm.
Are they obligated to be on recess?
No, they can actually come back. As a matter of fact, Matt Gaetz a few days ago sent a request out to his fellow Republican representatives to come back to Washington so they could get some important stuff done, emergency stuff done. This was with regard to the Archer testimony and what they found out from that. But I agree. They should come back.
And they shouldn't even go to the news about it. Nobody should know anything. They ought to show, to use an analogy, I used to sit there back in the day when you had a crew that was live in radio, and you never knew what went on at nighttime or overnight. So I would set that alarm to get up at 1 a.m. and show up at 2:30. And to see the eyes get big, from the AM and FM studio, oh, God, the big guys, what's he doing here? I had some paperwork to do, and I'm glad I came by.
Yeah.
Who are your friends that are here?
Yeah.
But, I came in unannounced. Maybe they should go back in and just do a session unannounced.
Yeah, I agree.
And just take care of business. And when the Democrats, that's not fair, we didn't know. Well, you know what? You do a lot of things that we don't know. So,
well, I know that. I know that. Who was it? J.D. Vance, a senator from Ohio. He said that he was going to block DOJ nominees. Well, let me play what he said. This is J.D. Vance from Ohio.
Hey guys, JD Vance here. I'm out on the steps of the U.S. Capitol, and I've heard from a lot of people that they're so frustrated, as I am, with the fact that Merrick Garland has used the Department of Justice for politics instead of law. And I think it's time we stop just whining about this problem and debating this problem and actually do something about it. So I've announced today that I will be holding all Department of Justice nominees that Merrick Garland will use, if confirmed, not to enforce the law impartially, which is his duty, but clearly to harass his political opponents. I think that we have to grind this department to a halt until Merrick Garland promises to do his job and stop going after his political opponents. Donald Trump is just one and the most recent example of the fact that Merrick Garland uses his department for political purposes. We have Catholic fathers harassed for their pro-life activism. We, of course, have violent criminals walking the streets after the 2020 summer of riots. And if you're letting the violent criminals go free and you're harassing Christian parents for their political activism, you're not engaged in justice, you're engaged in politics. Let's be honest about that fact, and let's make this department work a little bit more slowly until Merrick Garland changes course and actually does his job the right way. Thanks, guys.
Senator J.D. Vance, also a best-selling author. I don't know if you knew that or not, but he writes fiction. He's saying what a lot of people are thinking. Let's do something now. Block stuff. Make some of your dissatisfaction be notes to the other side.
Well,
go ahead.
I would go beyond that because I think Merrick Garland, the DOJ, they've done illegal things. And if that's the case, and Jack Smith too, let's get it all together, get somebody to draw up the papers and light a fire under their ass. One that can take them out of office and hold them legally responsible, where they might get fined, they may do jail time. I don't care. I'm tired of this crap. And, if the Republican grows a set and does stuff like that, I guarantee, the right wing out there, the conservatives and the moderates will let them have more power because they do something. Take the time you got; it's running out, and do something.
You make the very end of what you just said is so true. There's no assumption. You can't assume you're going to have the majority in the next election in the House because there's only 2 years. And if we get a Republican president, you may get a Democratic House again. And what good is that? By the way, that's got to stop. It's instant gridlock. when you have a Republican president and a Democratic House. I mean, nothing gets done. People have got to wake up and see what the Democrats have done to this country.
The Democrats, when they vote for a Democrat, they go right across the board. It's pretty much the Republicans that will swing going, well, okay, if I put a Republican in, I got to have a balance of power. Screw the balance of power. The other side doesn't care about a balance. So you want a balance of conservatism, of moderatism or conservatism.
Yeah. Well,
you want to have.
All I can tell you is look around you and see what's happening right now. This is all planned. It's all staged. Every aspect of these Trump indictments. I mean, the fact that
it's scripted.
Yeah, they came out with the Archer information, Devin Archer information a couple of days ago, and the very next day they indict Trump some more. You know that if something comes out today about Biden, that Georgia is probably going to indict Trump tomorrow. I mean, this is how they're working. It is so obvious to everybody. And, the fortunate thing about it is people, for the most part, are starting to wake up, and they're starting to see this for what it is. They're seeing it as a political action moves, and they're not feeling good about it. That's why Trump goes up in the polls. Now, I don't trust polls, okay? Polls are they're put together by private organizations. You don't know many times who they are or who they're polling, but I do know that on occasion there are things called push polls where they can actually make a poll move in the direction of what they want it to look like. And it wouldn't surprise me if all of a sudden, like CNN comes out and says, well, Trump has been gaining his popularity with every indictment except for this time. This time it seems like the people have had enough. No. These things are manipulated and they're massaged by these different organizations. We forget. We have a short memory. Everybody remembers how the polls screwed up on election night. Remember in 2016, they were saying on the night of the election, they were saying that Hillary Clinton has a commanding lead, and based upon all of our exit polls, it looks like she's going to be the president of the United States. Except it didn't happen that way. The people who voted for Trump didn't talk to the pollsters. They didn't want to have their vote known. They just walked out of the polls and left. You had something you wanted to pass on? You pointed to the screen, and I didn't want to. If you have something,
no. I'm fine.
Okay,
I'm agreeing with everything, but I think just it's time for us to go after. They target us.
Mm-hmm.
We need to target them. And that's why, I said what I said earlier. We need to go after the Merrick Garlands and the Jack Smiths and everybody. And the other person would be the DA down in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
She's done some things that I would question.
But the thing is, they get away with it. They're put into these positions by Soros-funded organizations, and
they'll block us from anything we do.
Yeah, exactly.
But you know what? We have to sit there and. Yeah, it's like salmon swimming upstream, You're just going to have to do it. Not every move is going to survive. But if we do it enough, sooner or later, something gets through.
I mean, President Trump, they put him in D.C. this time. He was in Miami for the initial indictment. So this guy Smith, who, by the way, he looks like he looks slimy. The guy he just doesn't look like the all-American guy who'd be up there as the special counsel. He has, if you'll pardon the expression, a weasel look about him, okay? And he gets up there and he kind of glares into the camera and he makes his statement and he slithers away. This is a guy who indicted the former governor, I think, of Virginia, with bogus charges just before he was going to announce his candidacy for the presidency. I mean, this is a guy who has a record of bogus charges. By the way, he lost all those charges that were. But see, this goes back to what I've said before about the process being the problem. They actually, in many cases, are satisfied with the fact they've simply charged him. I mean, they may know they're not going to get indictments, victories in all these indictments. But the mere fact that they can drag President Trump's name through the mud, if they can sully him, you have to remember This is election interference. I mean, this is President Trump as the leading presidential candidate on the side of the Republicans, and this is Joe Biden's way of diminishing him. And he thinks it's working, although it hasn't so far. But God knows.
Well, we did it in the last show where every time Biden's in trouble, here comes a Trump indictment or something, a charge against Trump. Every time he's their go-to guy. Take Trump out of the picture.
I have Larry. I can play Larry Kudlow's timeline again if you want to hear it.
Well, let's do it. Let's make the point.
Okay.
One reason that this is coming out today is because former Hunter Biden best friend forever, Devin Archer, did his deposition yesterday and talked about the Hunter family brand, which is an influence peddling brand. Just hang on a second. They do this every time something bad happens. They come up with another indictment. March 16th, Jamie Comer reveals Biden's family payments. Then a few weeks later, April 4th, Trump's New York criminal indictment. That was the Alvin Bragg fiasco. Then later in the spring, June 8th, Republican views Biden's bribery 1023 form. Okay, the GOP unleashed that. The next day on the 9th, we had Trump's classified documents indictment about Mar-a-Lago. In the summertime, just a few days ago, July 26th, we get the Hunter plea deal blows up in Wilmington, Delaware. And guess what? All of a sudden, Trump has to face additional charges from Jack Smith about covering up tapes and having the maintenance guy. I mean, come on. Yesterday's deposition was very devastating for the Bidens. So today, all of a sudden, lo and behold, they're going to come up with some make-up indictment for January 6th that will hold absolutely no legal water. I guarantee it. Anyway, that's my hypothesis. That's my hypothesis.
I think you speak to something that is a concern for not only Republican lawmakers, but Republican voters. And that's certainly going to be a concern, as the president, former president, alluded to in his statement, that this is timed with the election cycle.
Yes, weaponization. So this is the weaponization of indictments. It's crazy.
And when you think about it, what happened to President Trump this week, it sucked the oxygen out of the news cycle. It did what it was supposed to do. They figured, hey, look we're getting killed with this stuff about Devin Archer. We got to squelch this fire, and they indict Trump, and they threw it together probably overnight.
But for it to suck the oxygen out of the news has to be a party to it.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, 100%. I mean, gleefully over at MS. I mean, does anybody look at MNSB? What is it? MSNBC. Yes, yes. You know that place. I never that network that I never watch. MSNBC. They are so partisan. I mean, they talk about Fox being partisan, but Fox is. I don't watch Fox anymore either because of what they've done recently with some of my favorite talent. But when I watched Fox, for the most part, they tried to be, quote, fair and balanced. Yeah. MSNBC, forget it. There's no fair and balanced anything.
Well, let me make a point here. Mm-hmm. Okay, you see all this deflection going on by the left. When anytime like Biden is going to be impeached, Hunter is in trouble, and all these stories come along. Now, what is the one thing the left likes to call Trump? A narcissist. These are toxic, narcissistic accusations. They are guilty of what they're charging.
Yeah,
this is crazy.
You're actually paying too much attention, Bill. You're supposed to be a casual drive-by viewer.
A drive-by viewer.
Trump must be a narcissist. MSNBC said
so. They said so, and they know what they're talking about. Ask, what's her name? Maddow, Michelle, yeah.
I got to tell you, James Comer was on the other night talking about, and I want to go back. I want to go back in the Wayback Machine to the day before the Trump indictment. I mean, I know that sounds like it's a long time in the past, but it was the day that Devin Archer testified in front of Congress. And I want you to hear what James Comer said about that testimony.
Congressman James Comer, the chair of the House Oversight Committee, welcome back. Sir, why would he have done such a thing? You actually met him. What did you think of Devin Archer?
Well, I think that he was under a lot of pressure today. We know that the Biden attorneys have threatened him and intimidated him. We know the Department of Justice sent him 2 letters over the weekend, which is unheard of. But despite that, I think he answered a lot of questions that needed to be answered, specifically that Joe Biden did, in fact, talk to numerous people that his son was receiving wires from while Joe Biden was vice president. And that is something that Joe Biden has consistently lied about. That's what the Democrats have consistently taken Joe Biden's position, saying he never spoke with anyone Hunter Biden was doing business with. But yet we learned today that over 20 times, in fact, Joe Biden, while he was vice president, spoke with people who were sending the Biden family members these suspicious wires that the banks nor anyone else in America know what the purpose of the wires were for.
And the nature of the, well, here's what Congressman Goldman, and he's all hapless and nervous. A lot of people noticed that. He was in the room, too. He's how he characterized what Archer said about what the vice president said.
The witness, Mr. Archer, was very clear that Hunter spoke to his father every day. And he indicated that he approximated about 20 times over the course of his 10-year business relationship that he had with Mr. Biden, with Hunter Biden, which would be about twice a year, that Hunter would put his father on speakerphone with whomever was at dinner, and there was no indication that he had any idea who was at dinner with them. It was just to say, hello, I'm at dinner here, and there was nothing related to his business dealings.
Hello, I'm at dinner here with a bunch of people who were paying me money. Vice President Biden, my father. It's obvious that this was no good.
Yeah. What middle-aged man calls his dad every day and puts him on speakerphone so his business associates can hear him talk? I mean, another thing that Devin Archer testified today was the Biden family, in fact, was influence peddling. We know that Devin Archer has violated the Foreign Agents Registration Act. That's a very serious law. But when you think about what Archer testified today, my question is now, did Joe Biden commit the Foreign Agents Registration Act? Because his family was receiving millions and millions of dollars from these foreign nationals. None of these people that he put his dad on the business phone with are reputable business people. They all are under some type of investigation or on the flee in the countries where they originate from. The people that Hunter Biden was putting on speakerphone with his sitting vice president father were some of the worst people on the planet. But yet they were paying the Biden family millions and millions of dollars. And Goldman thinks that every American is going to believe the fact that, oh, well, they just talked about the weather. How's the weather in Russia? How's the weather in Ukraine or China? I mean, that's ridiculous. So that is ridiculous. Every day we get more and more evidence that points to Joe Biden directly. All roads lead to Joe Biden. And today we learned without a shadow of a doubt that Joe Biden has been lying to the American people when he said he never spoke with anyone his son was receiving money from.
And he said that hundreds of times. So what do you think was going on here? I mean, It seems obvious, but let's just say it out loud. Hunter was showing his business associates, the people he was doing business with, look who I can get on the phone that easily. Right. What do you guys want done? All right, I'm going to go back and get it done with him when you're not around, but I just proved to you I can get him on the phone. Joe Biden on purpose didn't say anything substantively. The whole message was, look how close I am to my father.
Right. And they go to great lengths to protect their father, a term that Joe Biden's brother, who we've never started with yet, but he's just as bad as the president's son. He just didn't leave a laptop laying around. He brags about the term plausible deniability, and they laugh about it when he talks to people like, yeah, my brother's involved, but plausible deniability, ha, 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 ha. I mean, this is a trend that the Biden family has used. And one last thing that was said in this testimony today, Devin Archer testified that the owners of Burisma were pressuring Hunter to call Washington to get Shokin, the Ukrainian prosecutor, fired. And we know because we've seen on video Joe Biden bragged about, in fact, firing the prosecutor in Ukraine that was investigating his son's corrupt energy company, and he wasn't going to give them our tax dollars, our foreign aid, unless the Ukrainian president fired the prosecutor. And that's what Devin Archer said that those guys were pressuring Hunter to do. Call Washington, get this Shokin fired. I mean, this was a bombshell today. This is more evidence that points directly to Joe Biden. I mean, the number of crimes that the Biden family's committed continues to grow, and more evidence shows that Joe Biden knew exactly what was going on.
That's wild about Shokin, and Devin Archer said that out loud. Hey, that Goldman guy, Congressman, he looked spooked. He looked nervous, and you were in the room. Like, are these guys recognizing that this is beyond their control now? That the stuff that Biden apparently has been doing, I mean, obviously been doing, it's metastasized, and this is gonna, this is real. It's not fake news. It's not a conspiracy theory.
The walls are closing in on the Bidens, and the Democrats on the Oversight Committee continue to move the goalposts. The goalposts are so far off the football field, they're almost in the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean right now. The goalposts have moved so far on what this original narrative was, that Joe Biden never had any knowledge of what his family did. We're going to continue to bring more associates in. We're going to continue to publish more bank records, and we're going to continue to move forward. And I think the evidence will continue to mount. This is a snowball. It's rolling downhill. It's not going to stop.
I mean, how can a guy like this stay in office? You heard Speaker McCarthy. He's talking about impeachment, possibly bribery. If this is bribery, that's in the Constitution. I mean, do you think he's going to get impeached? Should he be impeached?
Well, I know how I would vote, but again, that's a decision for Speaker McCarthy. But I'll tell you this, right before I came on the show, Speaker McCarthy called me and I gave him a rundown of what was said today, and we talked about steps moving forward. So, stay tuned.
And what have we learned? We've learned that every time they come out with a whole stack of new evidence against Biden, there's an indictment following the very next day. Unbelievable. But, I guess we should get used to this. This is the environment we live in right now. It's hard. It's hard to.
Gaslighting, shifting blame.
Yeah.
It goes on and on. It goes back to my earlier statement. I mean, they like to say, the right is narcissist, but who's shifting the blame? Okay, Hunter caught with his hand in the proverbial cookie
but who's
jar,
more of a
Joe
narcissist? Who's more of a narcissist than Joe Biden? Honest to God.
Totally, and that's what I'm saying. So the news needs to get over it because they're guilty too.
Yep.
And if we're going to do an investigation and if you're going to be guilty of something, well, I'm sorry, but, you have a public duty when you get on FCC licensed communications and, we're on cable. Well, guess what? It goes over licensed telephone lines and other communication sources. So it still applies. They're doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing.
Jonathan Turley is a Democrat. He's a professor, I believe, at Georgetown or George Washington University. One of the two. I get them confused. He's a smart guy. He's a Democrat. That maybe isn't the smartest thing, but he's maybe one of the most honest Democrats you'll find in D.C. He had this to say about what happened with the Archer testimony.
No money has to go directly to the president. There's lots of ways to benefit the Biden family. But the one thing that we can't do is just walk away. We have to find out the full story here. I think this is shaping up to be one of the greatest corruption scandals in the history of Washington, and that is saying a lot.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing. For him to admit that, I'm sure he won't be invited to any cocktail parties in town in the near future. Other things are happening around the world we should make a point of mentioning. This is the weekend program. There are problems in Poland right now, in Belarus. And you were saying just before the show started, what were you saying about that?
Well, you got Belarusian helicopters, Russian helicopters. But anyway, they're in Poland. They flew over in Poland. So I didn't see where they engaged in anything, but the question is, are we close to war? And going back to the narcissistic thing, you deflect attention away from what you don't want people to see. You want to sit there and you ridicule the other side. Well, one major deflection that would be a war. That takes all eyes off of you, takes all the wind out of the sails of everything.
And you remember the Wagner group? That's the mercenary group that's fighting for the Russians. And they almost turned on Russia, and they started marching towards Moscow, and they were stopped halfway there, and they made up, and they were all friends again when they went back to whatever they were. Well, Poland raises alarm over Wagner group fighters near the Belarusian border. Suwalki Gap, I'm not sure where that is, and it's a gap between Belarus and Poland, is the new focus of European military conflict. Polish opposition say the Prime Minister Morawiecki, I hope I pronounced that right, but he needs emergency to win the next election. So what they're insinuating is that the Polish Prime Minister is going to bring Poland into some kind of military conflict so that as a warring nation, he'll have a better chance of being reelected, if you can believe that. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, and Poland is what, a NATO nation?
Yeah, which is going to mean that if they go to a shooting,
we have to step in.
Yeah, they go to a shooting war with Belarus, then we've got to go to a shooting war.
And if Belarus gets into a shooting war with Poland, Russia has to step in.
Yeah. Well, you heard what President Trump said. He said President Biden is sending American troops to Europe right now.
They don't do anything without a reason. So if the troops are going there, these guys have got orders, and they probably can't. They probably can't send a communication home that says anything, because if anybody's had anybody in the military in the family, it's watched.
Well, let me ask you a question, Bill. Do you think that? I mean, I think I asked you this already on one of our earlier programs, but do you think that this administration would bring us into a shooting conflict to take the attention away from their crime?
Yeah, I mean, it's a form of deflection. So it's, their tactic is, I mean, there's, I think Limbaugh used it, a guy that used to work for me, Quinn used it, but, the Democrats do exactly the opposite of everything they say. So, they'll accuse you of doing what they do.
Yeah.
But that would be a major deflection. They always said Trump is going to get us into a war. He got us the furthest away from war. And now we are the closest to war that we've ever been with a Democrat in the White House.
Hey,
running everything.
If you don't want to be at war, no matter who you like, you got to vote for Trump. Because the only guy who has promised us to be removed from that warring situation is President Trump. Joe Biden keeps sending our money, barrels of it, over and over again to the Ukraine. I think he just promised another bunch of our money to the Ukraine. I mean, they can't get enough. I got to read you this too, Bill. You know who Viktor Orban is? Viktor Orban is he's the head of, I believe, Hungary. He's the he's the president of Hungary or prime minister. I'm not sure. Hungary's prime minister, Viktor Orban. He said in an interview, he said, Russia as a nuclear power cannot be defeated, and warns against the consequences of continuing the war in the Ukraine. He stresses the need for peace to prevent further losses of life, mostly Ukrainian lives. Viktor Orban is, he's a conservative, and I've seen him interviewed on Tucker's program when he worked over at Fox. He's a smart guy. He was a friend of President Trump, and of course that makes him diminished in the eyes of the liberal and woke left. But he said an honest thing: you can't beat Russia. Because no matter how, if you take all of their soldiers and annihilate them or imprison them, the Russians, and that's never going to happen because they've only used a fraction of their army. They haven't put the full court press on yet. But if you were to do that, they still have nuclear weapons, and they're not going to lose.
And they've updated their weapons, but let's just say their weapons are 10% capable, 90% fail. All right. Well, you got 6,000 weapons. So what is that? 10% of 1,000 is 100. 100 times 600 nukes that do their job.
Well,
and that's giving that's writing their nuclear arsenal off.
Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev, he said, I think he said it like 2 or 3 days ago. We're now considering the possibility of using limited range nuclear weapons on the Ukraine's. I mean, it's like he can't say, these guys, if they keep saying they're going to punch you, right? At some point, they're going to punch you. If it's like saying, I'm going to hit you if you do that again. I'm going to hit you if you do that again. At some point, they're going to hit you. And that's where I think we are with this war. And this evil guy and his administration in Washington and what's happening right now with President Trump is evil. And people may say, well, how can are you trying to say that judges are in their back pocket too? Absolutely. 100%. 100%. A lot of these judges were picked by Obama and really picked by Soros, who's a friend of Obama's. So these people were picked because of their politics, not because of their legal ability.
And expertise.
Yep. So they wear the robe. They kind of look like a judge. They sit in that big chair that's usually elevated above the rest of the courtroom. They walk in and you stand. They sit down and they pontificate. But these people are different. These are politicians. These are people who are working for one side and against you. That's my humble opinion,
No, you're absolutely right. And that's just what it is. And that's why, maybe I have a pessimistic view, but I have it for a reason. And that's because I see how deep we call it the deep state. They're called that for a reason. It's deep and it's dangerous. And
so you don't think we're going to get out of this in any kind of a good way? Or you don't think we're going to be rescued, or you think we're headed toward a brick wall and we're going to hit it?
Well, I think if everything as it stands right now and as we see it right now means we're going to hit the wall. And in a year from now, a little over a year from now, the face of this nation will change forever. Constitution, throw it out the window. It'll be different. The flag will change. Everything will change. Now, that's not to say that it can't, but action's got to start taking place now. We can't keep waiting for the white hats to come in.
You mentioned the flag, right? There was just a bill presented in Congress that no flag other than the American flag could fly over government buildings. And the left voted against that.
Well, what does that tell you?
It tells me exactly what you just said. There'll be other flags flying over our buildings. I mean, I remember during Pride Month, they had a huge flag, a pride flag, hanging from the center columns at the White House.
That pride flag is just a ruse. I could sit there and go, the tree huggers of America, here's our flag, fly it. I have 50,000 people. I got 1 million people out here that salute that flag. They'd fly it just to get our participation in their party. But once they take control, that's gone. Because you know why? They sold this country out. They sold it out. And I don't know if it's not China that's bought it, and it's going to be a Chinese flag that flies here. They bought it.
Well, hey, listen,
they got empowered to work for them.
They got laboratories they're finding all over the country that are private Chinese laboratories that are unregistered. They're buying up farmland next to some of our military bases, our secure military bases. I mean, there is so much that is happening around our country that is being influenced by the Chinese government, including, by the way, I think our administration. And with the Devon Archer situation, you should really understand by now that they've peddled influence and the Chinese have bought it.
Yeah. It was like that old hippie Woodstock song. What am I fighting for? I forget the name of that song.
Yeah. Was it Country Joe and the Fish? I think it was.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I remember the name of the song.
Yeah. So I think we should just leave that one alone. But yes.
But it's true. What are we fighting for?
Yeah.
If you're that old hippie and remember that song, think about it and what it's about, and then now apply it to today. What have we fought for? What are we fighting for?
You know, every young man that has gone to war in the last 20, since the beginning of our republic, has fought for freedom, has fought for the Constitution.
It's gone.
It is, and now these guys are throwing it all away.
Even if we took it back, do we not have to maybe rewrite some of it? I mean, no matter what, we are set up for a change.
Yeah, but we can't do it unless we do it exactly the way it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, but are there people in place that can do that?
Yeah, I think there are.
Good prevails.
I could write
hope
it.
So
I could do it.
Well, I could too, but you and I, we're probably just a couple of misfits.
That's true. That's true. Hey, listen, we've done it again, my friend. It's our weekend program in the can, man, but with a little bit of luck, we'll be back on Tuesday to continue. Our number is 833-538-7868, 833-538-7868.
And it's mail at itsanotherday.com, mail at itsanotherday.com.
No update show this weekend. We're just taking the weekend off to breathe. Have a great weekend, my friends, and we'll see you on Tuesday.
Hasta la vista, baby. We're out of here.
The voice of freedom, CRN America. These days, when you want an answer about just about anything, you ask Alexa. You ask her about the weather. You ask her who won your favorite sporting event. You ask her to find a fact that you can't find anywhere. Well, we did that too. We asked her how many people have downloaded itsanotherday.com. And this is what she said.
From acceleration.com. It has been downloaded as much as 260,433,467 times.
I know. Seems like a lot. Seems like a lot to us, too. But it's Alexa. Thanks for making us a part of your day. And tell your friends about itsanotherday.com. We could use an extra listener. I mean, what do you do when you only have 260 million?